Welcome to the Elliott Alert. My guest today is Reverend Bifford from Jefferson County. He is a minister here in Jefferson County and has lived here for many moons. Thanks for coming to Elliott Alert, sir.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right. Well, Reverend, can you tell me a little bit about yourself? How long have you stayed in Jefferson County? How long have you been in ministry and all of that?
I have been a lifelong resident of Jefferson County.
Okay.
My entire life, all for 5 or 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in the ministry now. I'm in my 43rd year.
What? Ministry?
Yes.
Wow, that is outstanding. So you've seen a lot of things, right?
Yes, I've witnessed quite a bit.
and can you tell me a little bit more about yourself? You said you've been in the ministry for 40-something years and you've been a lifelong resident of Jefferson County. So that means you've seen a lot of mayors, county judges, aldermen, JP come and go. How has Jefferson County changed?
Well, to be honest with you, Jefferson County lags behind in many respects. Having traveled the length and breadth of this country,
mm-hmm.
I'm saddened that it seems to me that we are still stagnant
mm-hmm.
in many respects.
Right.
And I don't know if it's because we just are comfortable in our positions, and
mm-hmm.
we don't like change.
Yeah.
And we resist change
Right.
here in Jefferson County more so than many other places I've been.
But the one thing is, change is inevitable. Every day becomes a new day. So you have to change, or the alternative, you die. So with Jefferson County, and I know you've been here, and aren't you or were you a resident of Alzheimer as well?
Yes, I grew up. I grew up in Alzheimer, and I so affectionately say that Alzheimer is the best city in the world next to Nazareth.
Right. That's a mouthful right there, right? But even in retrospect to that, being as entrenched as you are in the community, how has things changed, or is it? Because I remember you just saying that we were kind of stagnated. Is Jefferson County the same Jefferson County in the 70s that it is now in 2000s?
No,
Okay.
Jefferson County is not the same as it was in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
In the 70s, Jefferson County would not have heard of. You wouldn't have heard of a black county sheriff,
mm-hmm.
Black mayor,
Right.
a black county judge.
Right.
All of these black elected officials
mm-hmm.
was totally unthinkable by the minds of many
Okay.
in the 70s here.
Now, what about like the 80s? When did you kind of see the changing? I don't want to say the changing of the guard, but Jefferson County becoming more inclusive to all races and religion?
I graduated from the University of Arkansas here at Pine Bluff in '82.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And little had changed per what you're asking me in '82. So I didn't notice a recognizable change until really, honestly, in the early '90s.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's when the things really went to changing somewhat.
Mm-hmm. Now, was that because, and I'll take that back to our strong church roots, was that because more committed people in the church and other places started asking for, I guess, people of the same color, or or did more people start asking for qualified people to be in positions that reflect them?
The latter statement you made would be, I think, most accurate.
Okay.
That there was more people wanting black people in office who reflected where they were. You know, not just somebody black just for the sake of being black.
Right.
And see, and then we had a lot of our senior ministers were moving off the scene, and we got more progressive-minded young ministers. Of course, we had bright minds like I always call him senator, but I'm gonna have to learn to change his title. But the Reverend Dr. Hank Wilkins and some of the other mainstream churches, that their pastors who had been exposed to a better way,
right?
And they really they pushed that,
right,
during that time.
And I think that's sometimes people always say you can't mix church and politics. People generally say that, but we also want a person in office who has some moral ethics, and we judge that. Generally, we try and judge that by their religion or how religious that person is. Is that a fair or accurate statement?
I would agree with that. I would just like to comment on the not mixing religion with politics. Now, in my opinion, that's just a political way to keep some of us silent. So that because when something is morally wrong,
right,
it cannot be politically right in the Lord's eyesight. Now, let me just say that. You know, I understand about political correctness,
right,
but the church, we live in Pine Bluff. We live in Jefferson County. And if anything is adversely affecting the community, it affects the people of God, those people who are in the church.
And so what I think I hear you saying is, I mean, there's no other way but to mix church and politics.
Chief, let me say this. I remember when there was a time we didn't have the Realms Community Center.
Right, right.
And some people like to forget this, but the church, the black church, was the only place that we could express our ideas and formulate our plans, because we didn't have these arenas and convention centers. And so we had to do what we had to do. Right. And so when the political machine, sometimes when you want to keep a message stifled, what you hear people saying is that, well, we don't want that discussed in the church. And I'm of the belief that we ought not be so heavenly minded until we are of no earthly good.
Well, I'm glad you said that, Reverend. We're going to talk about that a little bit in the second segment, and I'll be right back after this break.
It's a short ride from your neighborhood to your naturehood. To find a neighborhood park or green space near you, visit discovertheforest.org.
Hart, what's going on? I'm leaving. Why? What did I do? Not enough. You constantly ignore me. You barely eat anything healthy. You're half as active as you used to be. The pressure is just too much. I quit. Okay, I get it. I'll do better. Just please. Don't leave. Okay. But remember, if I go, you go.
Listen to your heart. Don't let it quit on you. Uncontrolled high blood pressure could lead to stroke, heart attack, or death. Get yours to a healthy range before it's too late.
Welcome back to the Elliott Alert. My guest again is Reverend Bifford from Jefferson County. He's a minister who has been here and a lifelong resident of Jefferson County and well respected in the ministry. Reverend Bifford, we were just talking during the first segment about mixing religion and politics, and I was saying I don't see in today's society or even back in the past how a person could not have some form of religion and run for office, because 9 times out of 10 we want our leaders to have some moral or Christianity or some form of religion in those different positions, because when times get rough, we want them to be able to say or be able to look for a higher power for doing what's right. Is that a fair analogy?
Certainly. Whenever the election season comes around, most politicians seek the help of the clergy, regardless of whether he's Methodist or
right.
Church of God in Christ, Baptist. They overlook these denominational
right.
tags when it's time to vote.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. A lot of times you see even now in our presidential election, you see one of the candidates going to the black church to, I guess, to ask for support. Now, my perspective on it is, if you are trying to get my vote, but none of your policies reflect me, then I don't see why it's necessary for you to come in a place that I worship and ask me to support you. Now, I know the church is open to everyone, and I believe that, but at some point, I think people have to make a decision. Just how far are we going to go, or to let politics seep into religion? Because now I think it's kind of entrenched. Do you think so?
I find it difficult, and I hear, and I have heard all of my life, some of the church parishioners are adamant about separation, of the political and the religious arm. That some people don't even want. They don't even want a politician to even speak in the church. But it's you can't have a Christian, a believer, a man or woman of faith, and then overlook what the people who are in the government are doing, what regulations and rules they're passing, laws they're passing, that sometimes adversely affect everything that the religious community stands for.
Right. You're absolutely right, because if that was the case, if there was a separation between church and politics, then no politician would travel to the church, whatever that church is, and ask for support. They would just say, okay, that's a day that is sacred to most people, and I will wait until Monday through Saturday to get their attention or to speak to them. But that Sunday is probably the day where you can actually grab people's attention and get a message across to them that they can say, okay, well, maybe this is who this person is.
For example, when the leader of the church discovers that the man or woman who is seeking office is a member of a church, that this person has a sense of family values.
Right.
When he comes to church, for an example, if the church leader is an advocate of education and higher learning, and this candidate comes in and says, I'm going to work to make sure that there is more scholarship money available for the kids in our community.
Right.
The pastor of the church does not have to say to his members, vote for candidate A.
Right.
Because all year long he's talked about what needs to be done to help our kids get educated. The members have heard that all the year.
Right.
Then when this man comes in and says that I'm going to work to make sure that our kids can get financial aid or whatever to get a better education, they say that's our man.
Right. Right. Without the pastor having to say it.
That's right.
Without the pastor.
That's right.
And see, the thing about that is also after that, and the church or our religious community have supported them, where is, after this person gets elected, where's the accountability?
Now, that's a good question, because many times our politicians are long on promises and short on performance. And what we have to do is have, for the lack of a better, town hall meetings where we call our elected officials in, and then we can address to this man or woman what our concerns are, what we feel that he hasn't or she hasn't delivered on.
Right, right. And see, I would say other nationalities do a better job of holding their representatives accountable. And the one thing that saddens me is if a politician comes in and they say, well, I'm for better education, and when I get elected, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to provide scholarships. And now, it's good to say that while you're running, but once you get elected, you have a duty to make good on those promises. And as a politician myself and being in law enforcement, I believe directly in accountability. Don't tell me one thing and then do something else, because when you come back again, I'm going to ask, how far did you get on the first thing? Is that a fair analogy?
That's a fair analogy. And more of that, we should engage in that type of dialogue, that we ought to be held accountable.
Right.
Even on our side of the street,
right.
We're held accountable for our stewardship.
Right. And that's even, especially in reference to the ministerial staff, or the clergy, because people consistently look at ministers, those who profess the clergy and who are leading congregations. When you don't think people are looking, they're looking.
That's right.
And not only are they looking, but they're judging. Is that a fair analogy?
That is 100% correct.
And it's the same with police officers as well, and any community leaders. People, even if it's something that is not what it is but look different, when a person sees it, they're still looking and saying it is what it is. So it's really, to me, it's a basic thing for politicians and clergy members and other people to live, to look a certain way and to act a certain way. I mean, is that?
Well, usually when the public sees a minister, the pastor, a doctor, a lawyer,
right,
they have this idea of how you ought to look. Now, some people play that down, but how you look,
right,
says a whole lot about what you're representing.
You're absolutely right, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in the next segment. I have to go on break, but we will talk about that in the next segment. We'll be right back.
I've come up with the family emergency plan.
What is it?
It's difficult to talk about, so I'm not telling you.
I'm so glad I won't have to remember anything.
Me too. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Welcome back to the Elliott Alert. Again, my guest is Reverend Bifford, from a long-lasting minister in Jefferson County. And thanks again for coming, Reverend Bifford. And when we left, we were talking about religion and church and politics. As I was saying, I think as any leader, you have a duty to serve your community. But I think what frustrates all of us is that the accountability stand. Why is it that the Ministerial Alliance or the people in church or just people in the community don't hold our leaders accountable? Because again, you're talking about a person coming to you asking for your support, asking you to get up out your bed and go press that lever for them. So why shouldn't they have to do what they said that they were going to do when they came to you?
If I understand your question correctly, you're asking why the religious community do not hold the politicians accountable for what they have promised.
Right.
Sometimes certain people have been buttonholed.
You're going to have to explain that.
And
Reverend.
what I mean by that is that they've gotten things done for themselves or for their particular sector.
Okay.
And so they're not concerned about the broad spectrum.
Right.
You know, if you let me say, if you're going to give you're going to get my ditches clean, you're going to put some rocks on my road.
Right.
And when I look at that, I can say, well, he's a good representative.
Right. Right.
so that may be part of the problem.
Right.
But we ought to be concerned about not just the individual,
Right.
but the citizenry collectively.
That's right.
And we should hold these people who run and who seek office, and after they're elected, we ought to hold them accountable. We ought to hold their feet to the fire. And we ought to say very aggressively that if you do not work on it, let us see that you're working on what you promised, we will as aggressively unseat you.
Right.
Worked on, yeah.
And you're absolutely right, because when someone is running for office, they don't say, well, hey, you know, I'm not going to look at the masses. I'm going to take care of this particular area. And as long as those people in that area are satisfied with me, then I'm gonna be fine. What politicians say, and people who want to represent you, is they speak about the masses. When we were talking about education, they say, I want scholarships for people in my district or the state. They're gonna always take the higher road. I want this to happen. So when someone has entrusted their support to a leader, then that person has a duty to look at the masses. Now, I'm not crazy enough to not believe, of course, people who are your star supporters, you're going to try and help as much as possible. But the same people who may not be as close to you, still you have a responsibility to help them, especially if they have given you the support that you asked. Is that a fair analogy?
Yes. You take in the pastorship of a church. If the pastor is not concerned about the least of the members. You see, you don't want just the jet set
Right.
In your church.
Right.
Because you have more other people who are not of the privileged few.
Right.
And if we can get everybody in our church to be middle income earners,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
then we'll have less problems because you see, if you got something to eat and I have something to eat, I'm not likely to be trying to take what you have.
Right. All right.
And we're going to see that problem in our community.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I'm getting off the, but one of the reasons that crime
Mm-hmm.
is escalating so
Mm-hmm.
is because that too long we have not been concerned
Mm-hmm.
about those who have not.
And you're absolutely right, Reverend, because see, you hit on a point of economics. When we're looking at actually creating jobs and making jobs so everybody from the least to the most has a job and is paying taxes, we have a better community. We have a richer community. We have better schools. We have better everything. See, this thought about supporting I guess the 1% and then it would trickle down, that hasn't happened. And it has never worked. So I'm of the thought that if we give everyone an opportunity, because even in giving the opportunity, some people just ain't gonna want to work.
That is true.
Yeah.
Now some people, and I think what we've done in this country is we have magnified these people who don't want to work.
Right.
And we've tried to say it's more of them.
Mm-hmm.
But now, when you look at it, and in my long career,
Mm-hmm.
I have not come across a man or a woman that said, I'm going down to the car dealership and I'm gonna get me a new car and I'm just gonna drive it until they come pick it up because I don't intend to pay for it.
Right.
I don't know anybody that
Right.
went in and got a nice home and they said, I don't intend to pay for this house. I just want to stay in here and my kids swim in the swimming pool a couple of weeks and then
Right.
they can have this house back.
Right.
Most people honestly thought that they would be able to pay the note on that car.
Right.
They thought they could pay the note on that house.
Right.
But economics had them. And it's see, because, and I know we're not all trained in
Financial, right.
and stuff. There's a lot of things that we could be doing. And I believe that we ought to shout in church on Sunday, but I believe that we ought to come to church to shout Sunday because of what we have done to make things better for our people during the week.
You're absolutely right, Reverend. And I just want to let you know I'm out of time, but thanks for coming, and you've just been placed on alert.
Thank you for inviting me.